Hello, all you crying prophets out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor. This is Undeclared Bajor, the best Star Trek DS9 podcast on the internet.
Just the internet?
My name is Fletcher. About to say hello is Data.
What up?
Today we're going to discuss Star Trek DS9 Season 6, Episode 26, and Season 6 finale, Tears of the Prophets. Alternate title, Daxall, folks.
That's messed up, man.
We will be discussing spoilers up through this episode, but not after this episode. Some spoilery things happen in this episode. Dax dies. So it's safe to watch along with us if this is your first experience with Star Trek DS9, but we also spoil other stuff.
Well, Jadzia dies. There's a difference.
Okay. Good nitpick.
That's the nitpick of the week.
I just wanted to get that in there as soon as possible after the spoiler warning.
Fair.
Tears of the Prophets, or Tears of the Prophets, originally aired June 17th, 1998. It was written by Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, the classic duo at this point.
Yep. And
directed by Alan Craker, I think. Data pulled that from somewhere.
That's what it says on the Wikipedia page, so, I don't...
There was one episode where they didn't put the director in the credits, and I watched it like 50 times trying to see it, but I probably just missed it this time.
Also, I figured out why apparently Robert Hewitt Wolf left the staff this year, and that's why Ira Steven Behr is now writing with Hans Beimler instead of...
Yeah, we talked about that on his last episode, didn't we?
Oh, we may have. That's a good point.
Yeah. And Sarah Clofton is in this episode.
Yep, he's totally there. He doesn't get any say over what happens, but he's there.
Yeah, he asserts himself a little bit. So when he wants to go join the invasion as an embedded reporter.
Well, yeah, but then after I meant when they leave Deep Space Nine at the end, and he's just like, okay, I guess I'm going also.
Right? Yeah, he gets kind of dragged along for that. But anyway, Peldor Joy, everyone. Another successful gratitude festival comes to a close.
Nothing weird or unpleasant has ever happened at a gratitude festival, so...
Nope, it's all good when it's a gratitude festival. Everybody's burned their gratitude scrolls or whatever, and the mood is good. Well, except for Kira, who is mad at Odo for arresting a Vedic for fundraising on the promenade.
Look, Vedics have to follow the rules too, okay? I'm with Odo on this one.
Yeah, I guess so.
Maybe you could have given him a warning or something first. I'm not saying that jumping straight to arresting was the way to go, but as opposed to being oh no, you can raise money for whatever on the promenade, even though it's against the rules clearly.
No, this is, we need to create a whole fake outrage about this. How come you're not giving money to Toys for Tots? Do you hate Christmas?
I like to think Odo donated first and then arrested the guy.
He's like, oh, this is a good cause. I do have to arrest you, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the season finale, so we have to touch on all the story threads this season. Unfortunately, including this Odo-Kira relationship one.
Sure.
But Odo is apologetic and tries to deflect by saying, hey, is that the Orb of Contemplation?
Yep, she's not waiting for that.
Right.
But it's a good thing that you snuck that in there so that we know there's an orb hanging around.
Yep, sets up Chekhov's orb.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Admiral Ross presents Captain Sisko with the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor.
Yeah.
Starfleet's highest honor, or something. Or something he just made up 5 minutes ago. It's not clear.
And he's got a picture of Christopher Pike on it and everything.
Oh, wow, I didn't even notice that.
Not in his chair, it's his face, but...
Nice. And the Admiral has good news. Starfleet Command is finally ready to go on the offensive against the Dominion. Operation Invade Cardassia is a go. And who better to lead this great undertaking than the newest Pike Medal winner, Captain Sisko?
Okay, I gotta pause for a second to say that there's a illustration, the original sketch of what the medal is supposed to look like. when they were designing it. And so it says Valor at the top. The ribbons are supposed to be, let's see, red, green, or /gold, and light blue. I don't know what green /gold means, but whatever. We literally seem to have pasted a black and white picture of Pike from like the first Star Trek original series episode, like into the middle of it. And then it says text to go in a circle. And according to the Star Trek Encyclopedia, the text on the award was Sic Semper Tyrannis. So, yeah, I there you go.
Why not?
Also, in an unfilmed or deleted scene from the episode, Admiral Ross mentions, the medal usually comes with a lot more pomp and ceremony, but we figured you wouldn't want to be called back to Earth just to sit through a bad chicken dinner with a bunch of brass hats.
Sure.
So, he didn't get to the hoopla that normally accompanies the Christopher Pike Medal for Valor.
I'm just glad to hear they put so much work into this medal that I didn't even notice in the scene. So later at Quark's, Worf and Dax finish up a long session in the holosuite, much to Bashir's annoyance, who wanted to play Vulcan love slave in there or something. And then it turns out Worf and Dax weren't even exercising, they were just talking.
I mean, did they go over their allotted time?
That's the impression I got.
Because then Quark should have gone and like said something.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's too afraid to go like in there when Worf and Dax are sword fighting.
Yeah, maybe.
But what were they talking about? Having a baby, blabs Dax.
I love Worf's like, okay, well, I guess there goes that secret.
Like after he was like, that's private. And she's like, nope, forget that. We're having a baby. Quark and Bashir are horrified. Bashir brings up the delicate point of there might be some issues involved with a Trill woman carrying a Klingon baby.
Like he already told her that before they even got married. And you got to imagine it was like completely unprompted too. He just walked up and was like, hey, maybe you should reconsider this because you might want to have kids someday.
Right. Have you ever looked at those Klingon heads? Like put two and two together. Where do you think that's going to go through?
It's like you should go find yourself a nice human and have some human babies.
Nice round head. Yeah. But Dax doesn't care. She's happy. She's going to bring a new person into the world and get to spend many beautiful years watching it grow up.
Yep.
After Dax leaves, Bashir and Quark commiserate over the fact that a Worf-Dax separation is looking less and less likely, along with opportunities for sloppy post-breakup hookups. In the captain's office, Sisko, Martok, and Admiral Ross go over the invasion plan, although at first I didn't realize Admiral Ross was there. Because I swear, like, for the first 2 minutes or something, it's just Sisko and Martok talking, and then the camera kind of pans over, and it's like, oh, I guess Admiral Ross was standing there the whole time.
Yeah, he just didn't have much to say until then.
Right.
So, you know how it goes. Admirals don't like to draw attention to themselves.
True. Okay. That's just his style. That's fair. But Sisko thinks he's found the soft underbelly in the Dominion lines. Chintaka, guarded by only 5 squadrons.
So, it seems that originally there was a whole, like, deleted scene where Sisko, Worf, Garrick, and O'Brien are, like, sitting around trying to decide which Cardassian target should we attack. And Worf is like, we should go for the system is spelled Torg apostrophe capital Q. The Torg
Q,
system,
sure.
As it's the closest along the border to Cardassia Prime. However, it's also the most fortified. One advantage being the Dominion would never expect an attack there. But the other being everything else about attacking there.
There's a reason they wouldn't expect an attack there.
And then Garrick is like, no, we should go to the Ventani system, because Ventani 2 was the birthplace of Tret Akleen, father of the Cardassian Empire. And Garrick was like, losing such sacred ground would be devastating to the morale of the Cardassians and a great propaganda victory. Disadvantages being that there was almost no strategic value and the Jem'Hadar would not give a crap about that loss.
Right.
And then O'Brien is like, I know, the Chintaka system. Because we've noticed that the sensor scans of the warp signatures from the Dominion fleet station there are slightly different and almost too synchronized, as if they were fake signatures.
Ah. All right, interesting. I mean, we probably didn't need that scene, but...
No, it's fine. They're just like, hey, there's not that many people there. And we're like, okay, let's do that then.
Yep. Also, I like the implication that you can, like... The first place to invade America would be like George Washington's birthplace.
Oh yeah, I mean that would get me.
That would be devastating.
I don't know where that is.
Right. I guess Cardassians care more about it or something. I don't know.
It's like, oh no, Abraham Lincoln's log cabin got taken. What?
Or,
will we
the
do?
replica where his log cabin used to be. This is horrible.
Okay, hold on. Where was George Washington birthplace? No, not day. Place. George Washington Birthplace National Park in Westmoreland County, Virginia.
All right.
That is right on Pope's Creek, which appears to be more like an inlet than a creek, but whatever.
Name your bodies of water better, Virginia.
That's not very far from Washington, actually. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. So
anyway.
Maybe you can just swing by there on your invasion of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Take notes, enemies of America.
Yeah, this is totally what you should do.
So, anyway, the only tricky part is going to be getting the Romulans to join in. But Martok says, screw the Romulans. They suck, and we don't need them.
Yeah, Martok likes to take that stance a lot, I feel like.
Right. He says, this time next year, we'll be drinking blood wine in the halls of Cardassia's Central Command. Meanwhile, in the halls of Cardassia's Central Command, Weyoun is a little concerned that Damar sent all their ships to the Romulan front, leaving the Chintaka system unguarded. Oh, don't worry about Chintaka, says Damar. Check out these new automated orbital weapon platforms. These'll keep the Federation out.
I mean, they're not ready yet,
Right?
But they will be, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, Damar is like, I got the free trial of Amazon Prime, so we're getting free 2-day shipping. And then Weyoun is like, wait, so they're not even ready yet?
Oh man, I chose Prime Day shipping, my bad.
Oops. But then they get distracted by a guy who comes in and says, there's a problem. What kind of problem? Me, announces Dukat in a perfectly timed reveal. Weyoun and Damar are not super happy to see Dukat.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Really, I think Damar's main thing is he's like, oh crap, he's pissed off I killed his daughter.
Right.
This is going to go badly.
Yeah, but no, Dukat assures him, like, no, I don't blame you for that. Benjamin Sisko forced your hand.
Yeah, it was all Sisko's fault somehow.
Right, yeah. I think Damar thinks, like, well, that doesn't make any sense, but I'll take it.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to argue with it,
Right.
obviously.
I'm just not going to say anything. But, Dukat's like, that is why I have come back, to get revenge on Captain Sisko. You see, I now exist in a state of perfect clarity, far beyond the petty struggles of mortal men. I have transcended, and I want to share this enlightenment with the entire universe by killing a bunch of people.
Yeah, especially Sisko.
Right. And Damar and Weyoun are like, okay, obviously you're completely rehabilitated. Dr. Cox's work speaks for itself, so what's the plan?
Nothing weird going on here at all.
Right? This is...
Oh, also, at some point during the scene, we get the first official confirmation that, like, either the Dominion has not attempted to bring more reinforcements to the Alpha Quadrant, or they have been in some way stopped from doing so.
Right. Something is keeping them from getting ships through the wormhole. They never say what.
Yeah, that was just like an assumption we were making up till now, but this is the confirmation of it.
Yeah. So, Dukat says, all I need is an old Bajoran relic that I know we have laying around here somewhere, and we can get the wormhole back in business and get reinforcements from the Gamma Quadrant.
It's a good thing he knew that they had that thing.
Yeah.
Among all of the many, many things that they stole.
Well, it sounds like he's been doing some research. I imagine he was doing something like, remember when Gandalf rode into the libraries of, Minas Tirith or whatever and was pouring through all the ancient documents?
Yeah, maybe he visited, like, the site of an old Pa-Wraith cult and had to go through their... It's like, oh, they were all killed by Cardassians. Okay. I bet I know what happened to their cool stuff.
Yeah, who knows what he's been doing with this runabout.
That's true. He is still apparently using that runabout that he stole, or shuttle, or whatever it was, all the way back in Waltz.
Yep.
Though, later when he beams into the temple in Deep Space Nine, it is a Dominion transporter effect, so...
Yeah, let's not worry about how he was able to beam onto Deep Space Nine. Some kind of, I don't know. I imagine he has some kind of backdoor or something into the station
Maybe he borrowed, like,
transporters.
remember that one time that the Vorta, like, beams off of Deep Space Nine and there are no ships anywhere in range for her to have gone to? Maybe he borrowed one of these, like, super long-distance transporters that they secretly have.
Yeah, something like that. That thing that happened one time, and then they just kind of
never used again.
Forgot it. Or maybe they adapted the shields to no longer be vulnerable to that.
They probably should have done that, yeah. Also, this scene is the first time we see actual Damar and Weyoun since statistical probabilities. They've shown up as like holograms and hallucinations and all sorts of other stuff, but this is really them finally. Probably.
This is the two real guys, unless one of them is a dream or something.
Dukat is hallucinating this entire thing.
Right. Anyway, so so they're going to get the reinforcements from the Gamma Quadrant, and then they can destroy Captain Benjamin Sisko and the Federation. And Weyoun is like, okay, great, but to be clear, the Federation is the priority, right? It kind of concerns me that you said Captain Sisko first, and with such emphasis. Because if I have to choose... But back at Deep Space Nine, some Romulans show up for some strategic planning, but as you might predict, having Romulans and Klingons in the same room makes it difficult to be productive.
I do love how the Romulan guy just, like, he's taking the tack of... I'm just going to make fun of whatever he says and, like, belittle him to my, like, Romulan cohort so they can laugh. And it's instead of any sort of direct confrontation.
Mm-hmm. Also, some guys are there in TNG uniforms for some reason.
Yeah, according to the note here, this is chronologically the last appearance of these Next Generation uniforms.
Oh, wow.
Although, there will be, in the final episode of Enterprise, spoiler, it turns out that Enterprise was, like, Riker on a holodeck watching the whole thing, and so he's wearing it, so, but that technically in the timeline happens before this.
Wait, so the whole show of Enterprise was on the holodeck?
Okay, so it's unclear whether it's just like the last, I think the fandom has decided it was just that the series finale. That's the part that he was watching. I don't think that the show makes it clear.
Because I've seen that finale, and I never considered that it was like the entire show that Riker had been watching on the holodeck.
That'd be a lot of holodeck time.
He's just bored. So the Romulans are skeptical of the invasion plan and favor a strategy of digging in and letting the Dominion come at them until they've had enough. But Sisko's adamant that won't work. The only way to defeat the Dominion is total victory. They need to strike and blow up the Dominion's shipyards and weapons factories and Jem'Hadar, nurseries.
Yeah, I mean, the Romulan plan does seem like a strange one to me when it's just like, that, like, they don't have to wait for, like, soldiers to grow up and, like, be trained. They breed them and they're mature in, like, a matter of days and able to go out and fight wars. So... do you think that somehow you will, like, out-manpower that?
Yeah. But the captain's passionate speech seems to make an impression on the Romulans.
I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and just assume that his arguments are logical enough. They're like, okay, yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, next time we see them, they're all in on the plan, so...
apparently once they're in, they're in.
Yeah. Once they've said they're in, they can't back out.
No.
That's the Romulan rules, I guess.
Yeah, didn't you? That's the Romulan way. Everyone knows.
Up in Vic Fontaine's club, Bashir and Quark wallow in self-pity while Vic sings Here's to the Losers.
I like that song, actually. He's like, that's not one that I get requested a lot. And I'm like, oh, why not? That's a good song.
When the song's over, Vic comes to their table and says, let me guess, this is about Dax having a baby? Quark is like, how did you know about that? And then Vic is like, I know all things.
I spy on everything that happens in the holodecks, didn't you know?
But then he gives them a standard, there are plenty of fish in the sea speech, and they seem to cheer up a little. Over dinner at the Sisko house, Jake embeds himself in the Cardassia invasion and gets Ben to let him on the Defiant by suggesting that if he can't be on the Defiant, maybe he'll just hitch a ride with Martok instead.
Sisko should be like, yeah, go ahead. Enjoy that.
He's like, yeah, see the war from a Klingon perspective. And Sisko's like, okay, you can be on the Defiant.
What a pushover.
Then they hug, and suddenly Sisko has a prophet vision. The prophets tell him that the Sisko is of Bajor, and bad stuff might happen if he leaves, even though one time we told you that you will never find rest on Bajor.
Yeah, and also he's left Bajor many, many times.
Yeah.
So it does seem kind of random.
Yeah, he does it like once every other week. But Sisko says, wait, what will happen? Like, you mean just if I leave, or are you more worried about me taking all of our firepower to go invade Cardassia? I need more details. But they don't give him any.
And they're like, no, never details.
Later, Admiral Ross briefs Sisko, Martok, and Romulan Guy on the latest developments in Chintaka. The Cardassians call them orbital weapon platforms, says the Admiral. Because that is what they are.
Yeah, it's not like it's a complex name.
The Amazon delivery man left them on the Chintaka porch, but Damar came out and took them inside before we could roll by and grab them. Now we have 2 or 3 days before they're fully assembled, depending on how fast Damar finds his Allen wrench. So we've got to move fast. We'll leave first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so not so fast that we're leaving like right now, but pretty fast.
So, I mean, I got stuff to do tonight, but tomorrow we'll definitely leave.
It really seems like if they had just been like, let's leave now, it would have solved a lot of problems in the episode.
Yeah, definitely. They would have just rolled right into Chintaka with no problem.
Yeah.
And they'd probably been back in time to stop Dukat.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, like, some of our ships haven't made it yet. Well, apparently you didn't need a lot of ships to take Chintaka, as far as we could tell, so...
After the briefing, Sisko tells Ross about his vision. Ross is annoyed and tells Sisko he has to make a decision. Either he's the emissary or a Starfleet captain. And I suggest you choose Starfleet captain, because we give much clearer orders.
Also, medals and
right.
We pay for where you live and stuff.
Did the prophets give you a Medal of Valor? I don't think so.
You should be like, you do realize that the prophets, like, stopped the reinforcement army that would have conquered us by now, right?
Uh-huh.
And, maybe you should give what they say some consideration. I'm just saying.
Yeah, have you not noticed a pattern of what happens when the prophets get involved by now? But,
Admiral Ross isn't here for all of those things, but he must have read the reports.
True. But yeah, Sisko is like, okay, I'll see you at 0500. Back on Cardassia, Wayun is worried about the gathering fleet at DS9. But Damar says, don't worry. After I assembled that first weapon platform, the rest were easy. They'll totally be ready by the time they get here. Just as long as they attack that one system and don't change up their plans at all, we'll be fine. Then a cheery Dukat comes in carrying a box, which he declares the key to victory. Wayun and Damar give each other a look. Dukat says, you see, after the prophets erased those 1,500 Jemadar ships from existence, I thought to myself, maybe we should look into this whole prophets thing instead of just ignoring it.
Yep.
And then he takes out a wooden figurine out of the box and starts chanting in what I assume is Bajoran. Then he breaks the figurine in half, and some familiar-looking orange mist comes out and possesses Dukat, turning his eyes red. So we've seen this all before. We know what's up.
Yeah, and apparently, it's confirmed, not in this episode, but at some point, that, Kost Emojin, who we've seen before, is indeed the Pah-wraith that is seen coming out of that thing. So, I guess after the failed Judgment Day thing, he went and hung out in a statue.
Interesting. Kost Emojin wasn't the one that possessed Jake, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was.
In the Reckoning was Kost Emojin.
How did he get into that statue then?
I don't know.
Also, this has always annoyed me, but way back a long time ago, or I think when the Pah-wraith inhabited Keiko, Rom called it Kost Amoran.
Sure.
But now there's Kost Emojin.
Yeah, maybe
those
Kost,
two different words or concepts.
Maybe Kost is just the how you identify the Pah-wraith. There's Kost Bob and Kost Emojin and Kost Sam.
Okay, could be.
Hold on, let's look at this.
It just always bothered me because they sound so similar, but it's like they're one letter off, and I'm like, did the writers forget, accidentally misspell it one time and then it stuck? Or
maybe Rom just can't pronounce it correctly.
That's
that would
true.
Be
also
on target. Let's see. The Bajoran word kosmoran came from the verb kost, that meant to be, and amoran, which meant banished.
Oh.
So, okay, yeah, it that is all it says. It doesn't specify how that's related to coast emotion, except, that there's the Parwraith in that episode.
Okay.
According to the script for the assignment, the following pronunciations were provided: moron, kosmoran, and cost. So it's cost, moron. All right. Oh, here we go. Ambiguity existed as to whether Coast Emojin was an individual or another name for the Parwraith. Kai Wynn referred to it from an ancient prophecy as an individual in the Reckoning. However, spoiler, I guess, later the Parwraiths that defeated in that episode are... Okay, so apparently we're not sure. Maybe Coast Emojin just also means Parwraiths.
Oh, okay.
So this might be a good time to talk about the original idea for the episode.
Oh.
So Ira Stephen Bear says, the basic premise that we're going with here, we're going to send Sisko to Earth and all the gods will be dead. That's the entire sentence that's in here from him. So I don't know what he was getting at there. But then Renee Echevarria takes over. It's like, we basically knew we wanted to give Sisko a big setback and have the Dominion attack the Prophets because... Important in the preliminary stages of formulating this idea was the episode The Reckoning, which Echevarria explains, by the end of that episode, time is sort of out of joint and things are not as they were destined to be. And so we kind of love that idea of this prophecy is unfulfilled, the Parwraiths weren't defeated, and so now, like, what does that mean? What doors does that open up into the future? And apparently it's Dukat is able to summon one to help him out.
Yep.
But going from that, they went through several kind of slightly different iterations where it's like originally the story was the Defiant is sent away from the station to attack a biogenic plant that's protected by a defensive grid. And then while the Defiant is doing that, Dukat steals a shuttle from the station and takes a chronoton bomb into the wormhole. And then Dax, who's been left in charge of the station, goes after him and is somehow killed. But the writers couldn't decide exactly how to kill her off. And Ira Stephen Bear says, we had a lot of discussions about what constitutes a heroic death. There were a lot of cliches to avoid, and some cliches that were necessary. And so they're like, okay, let's change that up some.
So this was their attempt at a heroic death?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And so in the first draft of the script, Dukat has the chronoton generator, goes into the wormhole, and Jadzia follows him, and he kills her with a phaser. And Michael Pillar's like, I felt that there's like a missed opportunity for drama there, and it felt kind of rushed, and you lost the goodbye scene that would really choke the audience up. So they're like, okay, we got to rewrite it so that there's like time for her to say goodbye to Worf. So, all right, let's change that. But also, like in the earlier script, Dukat he has to get a shuttle, he has to get a chronoton generator, he has to get an orb. It's all too mechanical, comings and goings in a spacecraft. It didn't have like the mythic proportions we were looking for, and so Ronald D. Moore's like, hey, why doesn't he use a Parwraith to destroy the wormhole? And they went from there. But also, in earlier versions of the story, like, Garak has a very prominent role in the story. Where it's like, Garak and Kira go off to the Badlands to find and intercept Dukat, because Garak has been obsessively looking for him for months, and has gotten a lead on his movements that suggests he'll be, like, crossing over the border from Dominion territory. So they go to the Badlands to wait for him, but he tricks them into going after the wrong ship, and Dukat slips past them to Deep Space Nine. And then they were like, eventually dropped that whole thing because it doesn't go anywhere and also just makes our heroes look bad. And also in the original story, Dukat was going to steal an orb from the temple and use it to kill the Prophets with the chronoton bomb. But then he also has some Jem'Hadar soldiers that come and attack with him. And that gives him time to, like, break into the temple. And Dax realizes, oh, the attack is a diversion. And she, like, races to the temple and finds Dukat and some Cardassians there. And she's outnumbered and they take her down. And Dukat executes her as retribution for the death of Zial, hoping to cause Sisko the kind of grief that he has experienced. And so the staff kind of went back and forth on that one. And they were like, the diversionary raid doesn't really make sense to get Dax to the temple on her own, because if she thought something was going on and she was in charge, she'd bring a bunch of guys with her. So also the execution angle was too brutal. We thought she should at least go down with a phaser in her hand. So I guess that's the heroic part.
Did she have a phaser in her hand?
I don't remember if it was in her hand, but when we get to the scene, you'll notice as she's like thanking the prophets, she very conspicuously is wearing a phaser. And it's just like, yes, this is a completely normal thing that she walks around wearing all the time.
Oh, yeah. Also, I noticed that Kira, I think it was this episode, Kira was wearing a phaser the whole time. And I kept being like, when's she going to use that phaser? And she never did.
Okay, now I'm going to look at Kira. Hold on. Let's see. I don't think she's wearing it in that scene where she's arguing with Odo at the beginning, but maybe she gets it later. Let's see. I'm going to jump forward. Okay, here she is when we haven't gotten there yet, but Odo's like, we're broken up, right? And she's like, what? No, what, are you dumb? I don't think she's wearing a phaser here either. No, she's not.
I might be thinking about last episode.
Oh, she is wearing it on the Defiant later. That kind of makes sense, though.
Yeah, maybe. But basically what you're saying is they felt like the death wasn't heroic enough. The proportions weren't mythic enough.
Yep.
So they decided, let's just have Dukat sneak in, randomly kill Dax, open the orb, and then leave.
Well, yeah, and Pa Wraith stuff. That makes it more mythic.
Oh, okay. I gotta say, this alternate version of the story sounds a little bit more interesting to me, but...
I kind of see where they're coming from on the part where it's like, you don't want to send Dukat on a scavenger hunt of, okay, I got to get the orb, I got to get a chronoton generator, I got to get a shuttle. That does seem a little mechanical.
I mean, kind of like, chasing down leads in the Badlands and stuff like that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, no. That part I can agree with.
So, yeah. Then, as the time for the invasion draws near, as you just alluded to, Kira comes by Odo's office. Odo is worried she wants to break up over the whole draconian arrest of the Vedic thing, but apparently she's over that. She's heading out with the invasion, so she figures they should have a night of you-know-what before she leaves.
Yep.
And then finally the day is here, and everyone says their goodbyes as they load up the Defiant. Sisko leaves the station in Dax's capable hands. Dax kisses Worf goodbye and says she can't wait to start trying for that baby. Think of all the great times we had ahead of us. Oh, and Garrick is there too. He just works on the Defiant now, or something.
Or something, yeah.
And he doesn't do anything the whole episode, so I don't really know why he's here. I guess he's left over from the earlier draft of the script.
Yeah, they were already gonna pay him and everything, yes. So they're like, all right, well.
I guess we gotta put him in the episode somewhere. As the fleet approaches Chantaka, they encounter some Jem'Hadar who start hitting them with kamikaze attacks, which slows them down a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, some.
They're able to take out a few weapon platforms, but quickly the platforms activate and start wrecking shit up. Damar and Weyoun are pleased. This ought to keep them busy until Dukat gets back with our reinforcements from the wormhole. How is he going to do that again?
It was unclear.
Yeah. Well, he said something about prophets, and then he broke a little statue and his eyes turned red, and then he left. So, let's just see what happens. Weyoun is skeptical about the whole prophets thing, which he feels sounds superstitious, even though he was there that time the prophets eliminated thousands of ships, like Thanos snapping his fingers.
Yeah, it does make for that one great moment where it's like, you believe the founders are gods? And he's like, well, yeah, guess because they are.
Right. That's the humorous line of the episode. So that's different. The founders are gods.
And Damar's like, yeah, right, of course.
Meanwhile, the battle rages on as the orbital platforms will blow up a bunch of ships filled with thousands of people we've never met before. Garrick notices something interesting about the platforms. They don't have their own power sources. They're all getting their power from one big central power source somewhere. Brilliant design.
Also, they're somehow invincible. It's like, we can't get through those shields. And I'm like, well, why don't the Cardassians have those shields on their ships if they have the ability to have, impenetrable shields?
Why isn't the whole plane made out of the black box?
Exactly.
Back on Deep Space Nine, Bashir tells Dax that the ovarian resequencing worked, and she's going to be able to have a baby with Worf after all.
Dude, her ovaries got resequenced. That's crazy.
Yeah, don't know what that means, but she says, thank you, Julian, for being such a good friend. And he says, and I always will be. We are going to be super good friends for years and years. Ours will be a long and celebrated friendship. Then Dax, inspired by Kira, who earlier told her about praying for her in the temple, decides to go to the Bajoran temple to thank the prophets for the good news. Julian scoffs and says, if you believe in the prophets, which, really, Julian? Haven't we been over this?
Yeah. The fact that everyone knows that they're super powerful wormhole aliens, so I guess you believe in them at least that much.
In the temple, Dax begins her prayer, but then Dukat beams in, and he levitates her with some orange paw wraith energy. And then she spazzes out like crazy and then falls on the floor with a thud. Jadzia Dax is dead. For real, I'm not joking this time.
No, yeah. For realsies. I mean, she's not dead quite yet, and he has that weird moment where he's like, hey, if it makes you feel any better, I didn't have anything against you personally.
Yeah. Dukat Wraith steps over her body and opens the orb. Remember the orb we set up? Huh?
Yeah.
All the orange paw wraith energy comes out of Dukat and goes into the orb. And then the wormhole opens with a sinister-looking orange glow inside, and then it collapses. Back at Jintaka, this causes Sisko to have an Obi-Wan Kenobi moment, as if he heard millions of voices crying out in pain and being silenced forever.
I guess this is the moment to talk about the departure of Terry Farrell from the show.
Okay.
So, I did a lot of digging into the background of that before this episode. How familiar are you with the circumstances here?
Well, I've heard there's conflicting.
Yeah.
She claims they never offered her a renewal, and they said she just never tried to renew her contract or something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. That's but okay. So there's lots of pieces of it. It seems like one of the things that everyone, including Terry Farrell, seems to agree on is that going into season 7, because everyone's contracts expired after 6 seasons. That was when the contracts were up. The 7th season is an extension. So going into this, she wanted a smaller role in season 7. She wanted to be pumped down to recurring character a la Garrick.
Huh.
And she says that the stress of production on the show every week, all the time, was just too much. But there's also the fact that according to some of what I've read, she was already offered the job on Becker, which was a half-hour show as opposed to this 1-hour drama.
Sure.
It was also Deep Space Nine was produced Force Syndication, right? Much less prestigious is the Force Syndication thing, and it paid less. So we're talking about a half-hour primetime comedy that would pay more, be more prestigious, and also
be less work.
Well, be less work, but also everyone knew that this next season of Deep Space Nine is probably the last season of Deep Space Nine. So one more season of work versus potentially many more years of work on this other show.
True.
So lots of reasons, but I mean, this other show's being produced on the very same lot. So it's not like it precluded her completely from doing Deep Space Nine. She's like, I want to have my part scaled back some. I still want to be in the show, but and people pointed out that there were lots of possibilities that were already set up where you could they'd set up Dax separated from Sisko and Worf and everyone else at the beginning of this season, even where she took Command of the Defiant and went off and did stuff, and you saw her a little bit.
Oh yeah.
There were lots of things that they could have used to give her the smaller role. On the other side, there's the producers, particularly Rick Berman. Mm-hmm. And it seems to most people seem to say basically just Rick Berman. Were like, no, we're not going to reduce your role. You're all in or you're all out. And they were like, she's trying to play hardball with these negotiations, but she'll fold. But in addition to that, there's lots of stories about what an asshole Rick Berman was.
Right.
And Terry Farrell is quoted many times being like, yeah, he'd just be telling you your boobs weren't big enough. And look at my secretary, her boobs are perfect. And it just all sorts of shady Rick Berman things. Nobody likes Rick Berman. is
Yeah.
basically, and Ira Stephen Bear is quoted in being like, yeah, I didn't know all of this stuff was going on before Terry left, and if I had, I would have gone over and stopped it. But people who did know were like avoiding telling me, and I found out later that like they basically didn't want me to have to go and get in someone's face and like jeopardize my career and other people's careers because they knew that I would have if I knew about this. So, depending on how you feel about Ira Stephen Bear, you can decide whether or not you would believe
he
that sort of
totally
thing.
would have beat Rick Berman up. I totally believe him.
Yeah, and so, and there were things where, according to Terry, like, Rick Berman got one of the other producers to come up and tell her, like, if you weren't doing this show, you'd be working in Kmart, so you better just, like, agree. And she was like, I had a successful acting and modeling career before this, so what the heck are you even talking about? And so, at one point, it says Carrie McCluggage, the former chairman of Paramount Television Group, I remember distinctly one meeting where she came into my office and Terry was just like, I just want out. And she was crying and all this stuff. And then Terry Farrell, who's, I think early on was a little less interested in calling out people's bad behavior. And she was just like, my heart said that it was time for me to move on. I'd played this character for 6 years and, I wanted to do season 7, but it just didn't work out, and so on and so forth. And then later on, more information comes out where she's like, okay, yeah, like there was some messed up stuff happening. And she's quoted in here also as saying, like, I didn't want them to kill Dax. I thought that, they could have done much better stuff. Ira Stephen Bear is also quoted as like, I did not want to kill Jadzia. To me, that had very little to do with good storytelling. And the staff writers had no idea what was going on. Neither did the rest of the cast. At least that's the way they tell it. Like, Ronald D. Moore is quoted being like, oh no, she's definitely coming back. I don't care what they're saying. I refuse to believe that we're just going to like get rid of her. And part of that was because apparently the Dax and Worf storyline was really successful with the audience. Like, people were really invested in this.
Sure.
And so they're like, no, why would we torpedo that right now? But the writers generally agree that when word came down from the producers about how how this had gone, they had no choice but to kill off the character. And then we got Renee Auberjonois quoted in here as like, I can't imagine anyone wanted her to go away. She was good. And Michael Dorn was like, yeah, I'm saddened by her departure. Look, only the people involved know the facts. We just know what people want to tell us.
Yeah, that's always true.
And so, yeah, there's lots of potential drama and stuff that was happening. And, she went on and she got to do like 3 or 4 seasons of Becker before then they randomly like dropped her character in between seasons on that show also, which is actually what led me down the rabbit hole in the first place. When I noticed that, I was like, so is Terry Farrell just secretly like really difficult to work with, that 2 shows in a row just like randomly kick her out between seasons? And so I started reading. I'm like, oh, no, that's not it at all. It's all of this other. Okay. All right.
Huh. Well, at least she got to hang out with Ted Danson for a little bit.
Yep. Hopefully she made some decent money. It's not like Becker is exactly making the rounds in syndication now. So I don't know that the residuals are pouring in, but
she probably makes way more money still off her Deep Space Nine residuals than anything else.
I would think. Although one of the things I read said that she made enough money working on those 4 seasons of Becker to retire from acting and just raise her family and stuff. So if that's true, good on you.
I don't know if I said it on this podcast or not, but I saw an interview with the guy who plays the soup Nazi in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, to this day, my residuals from those 2 appearances on Seinfeld still make up more than 50% of my income.
Well, good for him.
So, yeah. And I also like that once you get to the part in any story where and then Rick Berman got involved, the rest of the story is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Like,
yeah.
It's never, it's like, and then Rick Berman intervened and he really like set things straight.
He calmed everything right down.
Right.
Also, it's funny because I was looking for, coming up with ideas for our season wrap up. I was like, I wonder if I can find some like just crazy Rick Berman quotes, and I'll do like, did Rick Berman or like Hitler say, like some sort of game like that. And I discovered that, there is a Rick Berman out there who is like the leader or CEO of the Consumer Freedom Foundation. And he just is a really shady character overall.
Oh, you're sure it's not the same Rick Berman?
I was like, wait a second, maybe it's the same Rick Berman. No, it is a different Rick Berman. But so to the attendees of an event sponsored by the Western Energy Alliance, the other Rick Berman says, I get up every morning and I try to figure out how to screw with the labor unions.
Nice.
Like that's the kind of thing that this guy says. Or there's a lack of evidence that secondhand smoke causes cancer.
There is?
Yeah. So yeah, this guy is just messed up. And I was like, is this Rick? Because this would make a great fodder for like this Rick Berman quote thing that I had an idea for. But no, it is a different Rick Berman.
So I assume this other Rick Berman has been offered a position in Trump's cabinet.
One would think, right?
So, yeah. What's he the secretary of? Secretary of Labor, I guess. Yeah, okay. So anyway, where were we in the episode?
Okay, Sisko's just had his Obi-Wan moment.
Yeah, and he stumbles off the bridge.
And Kira takes over for some reason.
Well, she's the... Yeah, I mean, Kira is not a member of Starfleet, so...
Yeah, there's a note in here. It's like, it's not clear why, when Sisko was removed from the bridge of the Defiant, Kira took command and not Worf. We've seen in various episodes, and it was explicitly stated in Apocalypse Rising, that Worf, as a Starfleet officer, is the XO on the Defiant, while Kira, as part of the Bajoran militia, is second in command of Deep Space Nine.
Right.
In addition, the Bajorans have a non-aggression pact with the Dominion, although Ronald D. Moore indicated in contemporary AOL chats that the Bajorans were combatants in the war by this point, and maybe it also made sense that Worf was needed at tactical.
Yeah, that's another good point, too. It's like I guess at some point they broke the non-aggression pact or something. I was kind of wondering why Kira came along. It's not like she's really needed, but maybe she just wanted to be there to like, it's like, now the Bajorans are occupying you.
I feel like it's more, we need to make sure she's not on the station. Like she would have probably been in the...
Oh, yeah.
In the temple with Dax or something.
There's a whole lot of contrivance to get Dax into the temple next to the orb. I feel like all by yourself, but
yeah, there is. Hold on, I pulled up the part where Dukat attacks, and I want to see if she actually. Oh, she puts her hand on her phaser to draw it, and then he gets her.
Oh, okay, how
before
heroic.
She can pull it out. So yeah, much more heroic than the alternative.
She saw what she assumed to be an unarmed man, and then reached for her phaser.
Hold on, he may be armed. Let's see. I mean, you wouldn't think he'd need to be, but
I guess when you see Dukat, you should assume he's armed. I mean,
he's definitely carrying some stuff in pouches on both sides of him, so there could definitely be a weapon there.
Yeah.
Not that he needed it.
I mean, he's a bad guy. You probably should reach for your phaser. So luckily, Chief O'Brien has found the single point of weakness in the orbital defenses. Kira leads the attack while Jake drags Sisko off the bridge. Before he leaves Deep Space Nine, Dukat leans over Dax's body and says, I know this is small comfort, but I never intended you any harm. Because I don't really know who you are.
Yeah, it's like, do we know each other?
Yeah.
Whatever.
If I did, I'd probably be happy that I took out one of Sisko's oldest friends. And then he beams out. Then the Defiant and some ships try attacking the power source, but its shields are too strong.
Yep, it's also got those Uber shields,
Yeah.
which makes sense. You would have put them there also.
Right. But then O'Brien has a Star Trek-y idea. They can't get through the shields, but maybe the platforms can. If they use the deflector to spray some Starfleet ship smell onto the power generator, the platforms might all turn and try attacking it. And Kira says, okay, let's do that. And they do it, and it works without a hitch. The platforms are down, and Martok readies his ground troops to land and begin the brutal atrocities against the civilians of Chintaka, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really considered that before he says it, but it's like, oh yeah, there's going to be like a brutal hand-to-hand ground war that the Federation is just going to pretend that is not happening.
Right. It's like, I had no idea what the Klingons were getting up to down there.
Tactically, do you need to take out the population of the planet if you like remove any ability for like ships to come and go from the planet?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess, you don't want like a guerrilla resistance trying to attack you from behind or something. But
I just like imagining like all the towns on Chintaka just have these like scary garrisons of Klingons marching all over the place.
oh, also, the one fun note is that as the Defiant is trying to attack the asteroid with the generator on it or whatever, the registry number changes to NCC 74210, which is the USS Valiant.
Uh-oh.
So
I sure hope someone got fired for that blunder. But then the phone rings on the bridge. It's Julian, and we all know what news he has.
Dax is gonna get pregnant. I thought you all should know.
Yeah, it's like, guys, I sorted the Dax pregnancy thing. Hey, what's going on over at the temple? Wayun and Damar get on a call with Dukat to express their dissatisfaction at Dukat.
Yeah, to say the least.
For destroying the wormhole instead of opening it up for reinforcements to come through.
And Dukat's like, hey, I mean, I know that it didn't go like we had planned.
Right.
But you got to look at this as a positive. And Wayne's like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, he's like, okay, so maybe it turned out that the ancient evil being of pure energy had its own agenda, and things didn't go according to plan, but at least the Bajorans are cut off from the prophets, and you know who that's bad for? Captain Sisko.
There you go. That's all. That's the most important thing.
And Wayne is like, okay, once again, I feel like your priorities might not be totally straight.
Well, but Wayne's like, that's supposed to make me feel better, and Dukat's like, oh, it will. Like, I expect him to be like, well, it makes me feel better, but no, he's like, you just wait, you'll see.
Yeah. Later, Wayne's like, you know what? I'm kind of glad that Captain Sisko is getting screwed over now.
Honestly, spoiler, but if I remember correctly, at the beginning of next season, it kind of does go that way.
We shall see. So the Defiant returns to Deep Space Nine. A little girl runs up to Sisko on the promenade and says, "Emissary, my mom says all the orbs have gone dark, and the prophets have abandoned us. You have to get them back, Emissary."
Yeah, it's not the best child acting we've seen on the show.
And Sisko says, okay, I'll get to work on that. You go take some acting classes.
He tells her, like, I'll see what I can do, and she just, like, completely, like, mono-faced, or, like, no emotion at all, just turns and walks away instantly.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this is, all right.
My scene is over now, goodbye. I also like that in the group of Bajoran children, only this one ever speaks.
Yep.
She was the only one with lines at the beginning of the episode, and she's the only one with lines now. But yeah, they all go to the infirmary where Bashir announces he managed to save the Dax symbiont. So the character is not totally lost. But the part that looks like Terry Farrell is definitely going to die.
Yep.
So there's not going to be any, like, Jon Snow's soul was in the wolf and then the witch put it back or anything like that.
Spoilers. I assume.
I actually didn't make it that far in the show. That hasn't happened yet in the books, and I got kind of tired of the show by that point. So, Worf goes in to see Dax, who says, "Our baby would have been so beautiful," and then she shuts her eyes.
Yeah, she reports that it was very hard to do the scene because she kept tearing up.
Aww.
And every time Worf does his, like, guttural scream, water would spurt out of my eyes. I don't think that on my close-up he made a sound because it was too hard.
But, yes, Jadzia Dax is dead. For real.
And I like that it was a very early Next Gen episode where we meet the Klingons and we find out that they do this screamy thing to let the afterlife know that a great warrior is on its way when somebody dies. And we have maintained this practice since then. Yeah,
Jadzia Dax joins Enrique Muniz, Tor Ziel, and Jennifer Sisko in hell.
Ouch.
According to Starfleet tradition, she's put in a photon torpedo. Captain Sisko stands over it alone and gives a little speech about how Curzon was his mentor, but Jadzia was his friend. If only he'd listened to the prophets and stayed, she might still be alive.
Or maybe not.
Probably only through a butterfly effect type thing, where she probably wouldn't have been alone in the Bajoran temple at that exact time.
She would have gone to tell Sisko that she was going to get pregnant at first, and she wouldn't have been there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. She would have showed up right after Dukat killed the wormhole or whatever.
So Hans Beimler says that this was the most important scene in the episode.
Okay.
He says, Ira and I wanted to find the anguish of the man and focus on what it was really about. The scene had to be about some deep, lasting inner truth about Sisko. We had a lot of questions to answer. Why is Sisko leaving the station? Why does he feel he has to go home? We felt that if he could answer those questions, he wouldn't need to go home. So we had to answer them for the viewer by letting them see through Sisko's eyes without being too specific as to where he is in his mind.
Okay.
Also, there's a translation in here of like the chant or song that Worf does after Dax dies. And it is only Kronos endures. All we can hope for is a glorious death. Only Kronos endures. In death, there is victory and honor.
Nice. Not a bad chant.
Ira Stephen Bear says it's based on a Native American chant, only the earth endures. And he says, I like the thought, and it was a nice statement that was lost. Bear regretted the audience did not get to hear the English version.
Couldn't put some subtitles in there?
I guess not.
So, yeah, now that the wormhole and the prophets have disappeared, Sisko wishes he had Dax for her one-of-a-kind scientific mind. He doesn't know what to do now, and decides he needs to go off on his own and figure things out. He packs up and says goodbye to everyone, and he and Jake head off on adventures unknown.
Except then we do know them because we see him washing clams or whatever.
Right. Kira takes his office and notices that he took his magic baseball with him, a signal that he doesn't know if he's coming back.
Oh, she is still wearing the phaser as she takes his office. Maybe she just hasn't had a chance to change out of that.
She's like, you know what? I'm going to wear a phaser all the time now. I like the way it looks.
It makes me feel good.
In the alley behind Sisko's restaurant in New Orleans, Sisko squats scrubbing clams while inside Jake does some dishes, wondering why he had to get dragged along on this lame trip.
It's like I was a war reporter right on the front, getting all my stories published by the Federation News Service, and now I'm here, washing dishes.
You know, there's not a lot of demand for, like, news stories about washing dishes.
I mean, there might be a niche. You don't know.
Now Jake Sisko with the dishwashing report.
They're still dirty. Thanks, Jake. So let's see. Some final thoughts on this episode in here. Despite all the problems putting the script together, Ira Bear was extremely happy with the episode. He says, everything from the invasion of Cardassia to lovely scenes with Wayun, Damar, and Dukat, to Pa Wraith's prophet visitations, all this and Vic Fontaine too. It's an amazingly busy show that's bursting at the seams. Usually when we do something like this, it's a setup and we pay it off later. This time, because of Dax, in a way, we had to set up and pay off all in one episode. But that means you'll get a lot of bang for your buck. I think it's a wonderful entrance into the 7th and final season.
Okay.
In retrospect, from when they did that documentary, what was left behind or whatever it was called,
Yeah.
when Renee Echevarria is questioned, he can't really call to memory how they killed off Dax. He did not find it memorable, the circumstances involving her death.
Shocking.
Yeah. The note, this is the 150th episode of Deep Space Nine, so that's fun, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And after the season is over, Rene Auberjonois is so overjoyed to be done shooting Odo for a while, he walks off the stage, rips off his mask, and hands it to Stephen Bear, Ira Stephen Bear. Bear says it was sweaty and disgusting, and Rene tells him, keep it as a souvenir. And then he did that, and in fact has it like mounted in his library and vowed to keep it forever.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've seen the clip of Ira Stephen Bear telling that story.
So there you go. That was this after this episode.
Nice. He's just like, here, have my face.
I'm out of here. I'm not waiting in the makeup trailer to get all this off.
Okay, so you want to do reviews?
Yeah, let's do reviews. What do you think? How did you like Tears of the Prophets?
Well, I gotta say, me personally, I find it kind of weak for a season finale. Even though we get some big battle stuff. But, I mean, overall, there's plenty to enjoy. Like, there's the battles. We have Wayun, we have Dukat, we have some Garrick, even though he doesn't really do anything. So, on that front, it's like, what more do you need? But there's a lot of stuff that I don't think there's anything very epic about the way Dax died, or Jadzia. It's just like she's in there, and then it's like she was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and then she got shot with some orange, and then she's dead.
Yep.
Like, there was no particular reason Dax had to do that. You know, it wasn't like she chose to make some sacrifice or, you know, she got into some kind of epic, interesting battle or anything like that. She just might as well have fallen down an elevator shaft. So, not super pleased with that. I kind of, even though, you know, it's always fun seeing like Wei-Yun and Damar and stuff, I felt like they were going a little bit over the top with their like villain bickering and stuff. I thought some of those things were kind of cheesy, although fun. Yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, it's a decent episode, but you know, like I said, as a season finale, I feel a little bit let down by it. Even though I guess we're on our way to invading Cardassia now, possibly. It just feels like the plot didn't move that much. So I think I'm gonna have to go as low as a lieutenant commander on this one.
Okay.
What do you think?
Okay, so I'm gonna address, I almost call it the elephant in the room first. The death of Dax.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people really hate that about the end of this season. The fandom, by and large, loves Jadzia and agrees that, like, not only was her death, like, out of nowhere and pointless here, but, like, they're not fans of that or where the story goes from there.
Uh-huh.
That's a very popular sentiment in the Star Trek fandom. For me, just on conceptually about killing Jadzia off, I have said for a long time, pretty much since season 1, that I don't think the writers of this show knew how to use Dax well, or Jadzia well.
Sure.
Like, a lot of her best episodes, or most focused on her, were the moments where she either doesn't do anything and is completely inactive in them. Like, the Dax episode is the one that always comes to mind from season 1, but even, like, the thing with her and Worf in the jungle, where like her contribution is getting injured and passing out, and that's supposed to be like this big emotional episode for the two of them. They kept doing that. There's standouts like Blood Oath, amazing. They could have done. Sure. They could have even Facets, which once again her contribution to Facets is not really doing much.
Yeah,
and all the other characters get to do Dax stuff. But that's like, I felt like there were so many stories they could have done with the character and used her better. And they just didn't. Like, they didn't know how to write good stories for her for the most part. And so, to me, killing her off here is actually not a bad idea. Because we've gone 6 seasons and never been able to use her right. Let's do something else.
Let's just hit the reset button on this.
I mean, if we had another option that was, let's write good stories for her, then I would be on board with that. I like Terry Farrell. There's nothing about her that I didn't like. I think that when they give her good stuff to work with, she does a great job. I just think that they've never done much of that.
Yeah.
So I am not as upset as a lot of the fandom about killing off Dax, and not really spoilers for the future. I personally like where the Dax story goes.
Okay.
So anyway.
Oh, if the Dax story continues, I mean, who knows?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that doesn't drag it down for me as much as it would for some other people, is why I go into all of that now.
Okay, sure.
About the episode, the rest of the episode specifically, I like and maybe it's just that we haven't gotten to see Wei-Yun and Damar and Dukat for a while. I like all of the scenes with them. I think they're a lot of fun. The bickering, I might agree that it's a little over the top, but it's over the top in a way that I enjoy seeing.
Sure.
So I found it fun, and it also might be, it's almost like a whiplash from the last several episodes that we had that just were not up to snuff, really.
Yeah.
And so this one doesn't even have to be amazing for me to be like, oh, this feels like good Deep Space Nine again. So I'm happy with it. In addition to that, like, the battle was good. When you think about the overall arc of the Dominion War, it's really not that impressive that we've finally taken a system from the Dominion, whereas, like, the Dominion has taken, like, Beta Z and is still holding it as far as we know, I think.
Right.
And has, like, done all of, like, had lots of successful attacks on the Federation, and this is the first time that we've, like, taken the fight back to them and had a success. And it's a success where it's like, we took it because they had no ships there, or almost no ships. Like, it's not really that impressive when you think about it, but we needed a win. And so I'm going to feel good about it.
Sure.
What else? I also liked the idea that the start of the story, it's like the whole, we're going to try to have a baby thing, because I feel like if the audience is as invested in the Worf Jadzia story as the writers apparently were saying that they were, I was like, isn't that, like, that's a natural thing. You would go into this episode being like, oh man, they're going to start a story about that. That's awesome. And I feel like that for the people who didn't know what was coming at the end, it really is a big, like, oh, holy, like, that hurts even more knowing the direction we were going with that story. So I think that, we can joke about it in hindsight, knowing what happens at the end of the episode. It's like, yeah, they're totally going to have a baby. Right. It's going to be great. But I think that for the time, that actually was a good approach to make the ending hit harder.
Yeah.
There's a lot about the episode that I think they did well. And given that they didn't have much time to prep for getting Jadzia off the show, and that, as somebody, one of the writers was saying, or we basically had to set it up and pay it off in this episode. I think they did as well as could be expected. We also are setting up something interesting that we haven't touched on much in a while, which is this whole prophet thing. I mean, we had the reckoning, but as far as like this big overarching how they fit into the big story of Deep Space Nine, we haven't touched on that much since the beginning of the season when they stopped the reinforcements from coming through.
Yeah.
So I like that we're getting back to that, and maybe now that Sisko is having to kind of examine his life, and we can look into, like, get more information on this thing that we really have never had much information on, and it's always been really vague. And so I like the direction that the show is going with that, and that we're pointing to some of these things that are like, maybe we can finally ask questions and get answers that we've really needed for 6 years at this point. So I like the episode. There's definitely some problems here and there, and if they'd had more time to build towards the death of Dax, it almost certainly could have been done better. But I think it's a commander for me.
Okay. Another thing I'll point out that annoyed me that I forgot to talk about is that the big battle basically was a Death Star battle where they attack like a single point of failure.
Yeah.
And then the threat is totally gone, compounded by the fact that they did it in the way they always seem to solve techno problems in Star Trek, which is by doing something with a deflector.
Yeah, it's true. The deflector is very popular.
So I was not really satisfied with because when was that last battle? Where it was like, we were trying to punch holes in the lines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, there was none of that. It's just like, they show up and they're like, okay, we got to blow all this stuff up. Oh, hey, look, luckily if we blow up that one thing, everything will blow up.
Yeah, I mean, they set up the problem of suddenly invincible shields and then solve it real rapidly. So it does feel a little unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Like, it could have been a tactical thing where it's like, they're not invincible, but they're like very powerful. And so we need to use tactics to attack where these defenses are weakest and get behind the platforms with taking minimal,
Yeah.
It could have been a tactical situation. It wasn't. It was a, hey, sci-fi problem comes up. Hey, sci-fi solution 1 minute later, and we're done.
Yep. So that was another thing that just kind of bothered me.
Yeah, I can see that.
I felt like I had to bring up. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind that they killed off Dax necessarily. It's just like, I don't know, the way they did it, especially since apparently they put some thought into how they were going to do it and do it in a satisfying way. And this is the solution they came up with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one step above Tasha Yar, just in that Dukat was there.
It wasn't some random alien of the week. Yeah.
Although I'm not even sure he can really be blamed for her death because he was under control of the Pa Wraith. But
and maybe I've gotten more lenient on that sort of thing since it felt like Joss Whedon to me, where there's just a very sudden and violent and unexpected character death, and they ride off of that emotion to bring the thing to its conclusion.
Sure.
And so like Joss does that really well. And maybe I'm slightly more forgiving of that now than I was when I originally watched this, because I feel like I remember being very unsatisfied with this also once upon a time.
Yeah. Let's move on to the title review.
Okay, there's a couple of notes in here about the title.
Okay.
One is the glaringly obvious, I don't even know why they put it in here. The title is derived from a line spoken in The Emissary, the series pilot, where Sisko, presented with an orb for the first time, Kaiopaka describes it as the Tear of the Prophet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But about the actual title of the episode was originally entitled Tears of the Gods, and another working title was Screams of Armageddon.
Ooh.
I feel like Tears of the Prophets works better than Tears of the Gods, just generally speaking. But Screams of Armageddon is a heck of a crazy title.
Yeah, that's so bonkers and like over the top.
Yeah,
I kind of love it. Yeah, I don't know. Tears of the Prophets, it's got that thing where you could get a sense from the title what type of episode it is, but I think it's definitely got some memorability issues.
Yeah, the thing is, like, in my mind, Tears of the Prophets is talking about orbs. And obviously there's the double meaning here where you've got the orb that plays a role, and you've also got like bad things happening to the prophets. So, right. Tears of the Prophets.
Yeah, they're probably sad about that when
exactly
blew up or whatever.
But it's just like it feels like it could be any episode about orbs if you're calling it Tears of the Prophets. And so I'm not going to easily connect it to this one, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have to put it on the lower end of kind of those attempted poetic episode titles they try to come up with.
The memorability I don't think is great. I feel like it's appropriate, like it fits. And I mean, with the double meaning, maybe it's fairly clever. So I feel like it does okay in those ratings. So I think it's kind of like an upper mid-tier overall title for me, I would say.
Maybe. It also kind of, isn't there a song called Tears in Heaven? Like, isn't that an Eric Clapton song or something?
Yes, a song by Eric Clapton called Tears in Heaven.
So I don't know why it keeps making me think of that.
There's also a television series. It looks like a Chinese drama actually called Tears in Heaven. But there you go.
All right. So you have any final thoughts about this episode as we get ready to wrap up the season? And
no, I think I've said all that I have to say about the episode.
All right. So we'll call. That's our discussion of Tears of the Prophets. Thanks for listening. If you like that discussion, take a tour of all our favorite Dax episodes. Dax, the one where she fell in love with the guy from the disappearing planet. What are some other good ones?
I mean, I mentioned Facets.
The one where she went back to Trill.
And did nothing the whole time again. Yeah,
and did nothing while her friends saved her again. The one where guys broke onto the space station and she did nothing while they stole the symbiont.
Yep.
So many great Dax episodes. And maybe you can throw in Blood Oath on there too. But yeah, all our reviews for those episodes you can find wherever you're listening to this. And if you want to leave us a comment, the best place to do that is on YouTube. So my name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Be well.
We look forward to seeing you next week, where we'll do our Season 6 wrap-up on Undeclared Bajor. But just remember, when in doubt, bring Garrick along.